Welcome to the T-Love Show, a conspiracy-based podcast that takes an in-depth look at the controversial sides of events throughout our time. And I'm your host, T-Love. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's T-Love. I'd like to welcome you to the first episode of the T-Love Show, The Moon Landing.
And counting. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 25 seconds. 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11. Tower cleared.
We got a roll program. Neil Armstrong reporting on the roll and pitch program, which puts Apollo 11 on a proper heading.
What you just heard was the Apollo 11 launch to the moon. It was their live broadcast. We would go 6 more times after Apollo 11 to Apollo 17, from 1969 to 1972. All manned missions to the moon. Apollo 13 did not make it. There's a Tom Hanks movie out called Apollo 13 that depicts the engine malfunctions or gas leaks. I think I saw that movie like when it first came out, but yeah, that was the only unsuccessful manned mission to the moon. Russia, China, and India are the only other 3 countries that's been to the moon. And they haven't sent people. The United States is the only country that sent people. It makes me wonder too, like Japan, any European country, like none of them have sent rockets to the moon, probes to the moon. We're the only one to send humans. Now, those are a lot of red flags, I think, because is it like we were trying to one-up everybody? Or, like, I know that we had the big space race with Russia. I mean, Russia beat us. They got there in 1959. And then again in 1966, they did a soft landing. And then in 1970, they were able to send material from the moon rocks, moon dust, back to Earth without human intervention. They didn't even send a person to do this. And they supposedly went to the moon, got material, and came back. China, they've been 2013, they soft landed. Soft landing means they just, slowed down and landed on top of the moon. Where, like India, for example, India sent their first probe up there, which crashed into the moon, which was what they wanted it to do. They were trying to penetrate the surface of the moon. They weren't soft landing, they impacted. And I don't know what data they got back from that. That happened in 2008. But again, United States, the only one to send humans. And 1969, 1972. And it makes you think, like, if we continue now, 2023, to send manned missions to the moon, would we even believe them now with all the technology changes? Like, we think it was a hoax. A lot of us think it was a hoax back then with the limited technology that they were able to do. I mean, now with filters and TikToks that can create images and reels that, you had flying saucers in your picture, Godzilla's in your pictures, storms, black holes, and thunderstorms. You can create all that on your phone without it actually being true. So the only way I think, even if nowadays being, 2023, that we go to the moon and we believe it, is if we ride in shotgun in that space shuttle. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can film it all you want. We ain't believing that unless we riding shotgun and we going. And your best bet is getting tickets with Elon Musk. Like, hey, sign me up for your Mars missions, dude. Because other than that, we ain't believing it. And it's already hard enough to believe the 7 manned missions the Apollo missions that we already ran, that those actually happened. And I think one of the lighter ones is they always talk about the flag. Okay. The flag was waving. It can't wave in the vacuum of space. There's no air. Well, NASA's claim is it was a wrinkled flag. They were trying to get it to unwrinkle, which gives it the appearance of waving. One, why are we sending a wrinkled flag to the moon? Like, that thing should have been crisp. That thing should have been straight. Old Betsy Ross should have ironed that mug out before she put it up there. But no, I don't buy the flag. I don't know. It's not waving. I've seen the videos. It doesn't look like it's waving, but they say, hey, we were trying to straighten it out. It was a crumpled flag. We're trying to straighten it out. You can definitely see that there's a bar on top that holds the flag up because of the weak gravity. It's hard to straighten out. That's what NASA says. So, okay, you can have the flag. I don't understand that theory. Like, that doesn't tell me whether we went or we didn't go based on the look of the flag. I'm just upset it was wrinkled. It could have, represented a little better. But outside of the flag, you've got 8,400 photos that are available to the public. Now, I've looked at a lot of these photos, and I didn't see every photo. There's 8,400 of them. But there's no stars. You don't see the sun. You don't see any other star in the galaxy. You don't see Mars. You don't see Venus, Jupiter, nothing. You see Earth. And NASA's saying, well, it was taken during the lunar day. All of our pictures are taken during the lunar day. Or our cameras are so bright that it drowns out the background and it just looks like a blank canvas. We've got phones that can take pictures with the flash on and you still see in the camera. Now, I know in 1969, 1970, they didn't have those type of cameras. But at the same time, like, millions of miles away, light years away, and we can still see the stars with our camera flash and you're telling me you're that much closer and it's drowning them out? I don't buy that. And then furthermore, on top of that, they got, the video of Neil Armstrong climbing out. Who set that camera up? I mean, maybe it was a surveillance camera for the pod that they, like, hey, we'll fix it on there. We can get you going down. Okay, I'll give you that one. But it is a little skeptical that the angles that they were getting of these cameras before we even ever got there. And I know that they've shown pictures of the training exercises with, scaffolds around them, and it looked like a movie set. And those exact pictures are either flipped or not even flipped, were doctored up to look like they were in space. Now, whether someone did that on purpose or they tried to fool us, I don't buy that one, man. I don't buy the pictures. Like, you're not doctoring up 8,400 photos for the public. And if you are, back then, you got over 400,000 workers for you in the Apollo programs. Like, somebody's telling somebody, or, there's got to be a whistleblower. Yeah, there's got to be a whistleblower. No leaks, no credible sources from the U.S. government, NASA, the 12 astronauts, and over 400,000 employees. Out of all of those people, man, I get the lower tier people not gonna have that knowledge. But out of all those people, like, you can't keep stuff in our own U.S. government from leaking out within 36 hours. I mean, that's a lot of people to not have told anybody or come out, try to write a book, and prove that this was a hoax or they were a part of the hoax. So no whistleblowers. You got to give a lot of credit to that. So, like, how could that not be real that we went to the moon, put people on the moon, and nobody tell anybody. That right there, that kind of swings the pendulum a little bit if you think about it. Like, man, nobody came out and said, "Nope, we didn't go." Now, like I said earlier, I know Buzz Aldrin didn't know about the Van Allen belt. So that's the next little conspiracy, is how did they get through the Van Allen belt? The Van Allen belt is just the radiation belt. It's two large donut-shaped belts that surround the Earth. It's made up of highly charged particles. So basically, it's just radiation. It's so high level of radiations that it's a lethal amount if you go through it. Could definitely do some damage to a person. And NASA says that they calculated this risk, and then they insulated the spacesuits with uh, aluminum. They put an aluminum shell inside the spacesuit to protect the astronauts from the radiation belt. And then they did calculations. They did these calculations on like I guess the narrowest parts of the Van Allen belt. There's two belts. So they had to get this right to get the narrow parts of the belt. So it's like the least amount of time the astronauts would have been inside the belt for their exposure. And then you have to look at, okay, so Apollo 11 launched in July of 1969. 4 months later, Apollo 12 launched to go to the moon. So is that how long it took for that Van Allen belt to cycle, like every 4 months? Or their trajectory changed? Because, obviously the moon rotates around the Earth, so that's got to account also. Like, okay, we want to shoot when it's the closest to the moon. But they said the average radiation exposure, they call it RAD. So RAD is the radiation absorbed dosage. So how much a radiation the human body absorbs is calculated by rad. And I think it's 1 rad is equal to 0.01 kilograms, or GY. They have their own little metric for it, but they also count it in kilograms. So 1 rad is equal to 0.01 exposure. And the average astronaut was 0.46 rad. So less than 1. So with that dose, they were saying, yes, okay, there is radiation out there, and we had to protect our astronauts. But how did they know when the narrow gap was? Like, how did they put probes out there? Or I mean, I don't know how they calculated the gap, or how much radiation was in these gaps, in these two rings. But with their rad exposure being, 0.46, like NASA was right to at least protect them. And you have a homeboy here from Ohio, John Glenn. He was the first human to orbit the Earth. So, like, what orbit was he in that you consider him in outer space and not far enough for it to hit the Van Allen belt? Like, was he exposed? Like, he was supposed, he went around the whole Earth. I mean, they have satellites to do that. So, I mean, we know that that's factual. And speaking of satellites that was orbiting Earth, the United States has put an LRO, a lunar reconnaissance orbiter, around the moon. It's a robotic spacecraft that's orbiting the moon in lower atmosphere right now as we speak. It has taken pictures of all of the Apollo landing sites. Also, so has China, Japan, and India. All have taken pictures, as long as with us, of course, we have 8,400 photos. I'm sure we've taken pictures. But independently, a verification outside of the United States, China, India, and Japan have taken pictures of our landing sites. Now, does that mean we went to the moon? Yes. Okay. We've been to the moon. We've landed on the moon. We've collected samples from the moon, and we've brought those samples back to Earth. Does that mean we have had humans on the moon? No. I do not believe we got through the Van Allen belt successfully without harming our astronauts. That's why they never went. But I do believe that those missions went to the moon. And back then in 1969, 1970, 1971, 1972, we were able to collect data. During the Apollo 11 mission, the Lunar Laser Ranger Reflector Array is on the surface. It was put there by Apollo 11, and we shoot lasers at it, and it tells us how far the moon is away from the Earth. Do I feel like we can get that information without that? Probably. And we didn't need humans on the moon to put that in place. So I don't think that is justification that we were on the moon. Is that thing there? Yeah. I mean, it narrows the range of the moon, the distance to the moon within centimeters, which is excellent. That does not mean humans put that on the moon. Apollo 11 put that on the moon in probably robotic fashion. We also collected over 300 kilograms of moon rocks and dust, which have been independently verified as lunar from other scientists around the world. Again, so did Russia. And I'm sure China did too. I'm sure India did too. We're the only ones who claim to put humans on the moon. And we didn't need to do that to do all the things that we have for informational wise. So again, I don't think we put humans on the moon, but I believe we've been to the moon. I can also say that we've been there because they found an abundance, and I believe it was India with their impact instead of a soft land. They were able to find helium-3. Helium-3 is not very abundant on Earth, and there's a lot of it on the moon. And helium-3 is used for nuclear reactors to fuel their nuclear weapons, their nuclear power. That right there tells me that at some point there's going to be another race for the moon. And it's not going to be for let's colonize the moon. It's going to be for mining rights to mine any resources out there that can help us here on Earth. Helium-3 has just been found, within, I would say within 2008. That's when India's impacted. So I believe that's going to be the next big race. Okay, what does the moon have to offer other than rocks and dust? Okay, right now we know helium-3. What does helium-3 do? It helps fuel nuclear reactors. All right, we need that. It's not abundant here. We need to go there to get it. But to get there, we've got to get through the Van Allen belt, the radiation belt. And I think that is what is holding us back as people to getting to the moon. And until we can figure that out, I think we're still stuck here. And I think that is the one thing that is holding us back is like, how do we get through the radiation belt without catching cancer or lethal doses that we're dying within 6 months of radiation? I honestly believe that is the one thing that's holding us back. Once we can figure that out, we'll be able to get there. I'm not so sure like what's Elon Musk's infatuation with going to Mars when we really haven't even discovered what's on the backside of the moon. I mean, China is the only one who's been there as far as we know. I mean, if we really did put humans there, I'm sure we drove to the backside of the moon, our little moon buggies. No one really has reported on what is on the backside of the moon. And China's the only one who's been there that we know of. And with that, that is my episode for The Moon Landing. I'm going to leave you guys with a song by Frank Sinatra called Fly Me to the Moon. And as always, you'll find you're lucky where hard work meets opportunity. Be blessed.